Doesn't have to have some kind of barriers, otherwise it'll get thrown up every night.
I don't know. We'll see. Well, and the things there are going to be relatively inexpensive.
Yeah,
Sort of homemade.
we just don't like start over.
Right.
Anything.
I don't know that that would be serious.
Well, I don't know why it would be an interest of anybody's, but that doesn't mean that I
Right. So, it hadn't happened in a long time either like that, so I'm
No.
not expecting it. I'm good, thank you very much. And sir, how do you do?
Good, how you doing?
Really good. June?
Yes.
I don't know that you got one specifically, but hope you're well. It's 4:00 on October 19th, 2020, and I officially open this meeting of the Conway City Council. We're to have an invocation by Keith Finkley of the Rock Church, if he's available. Here he is. You know, it's the mask. I was like, thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Lord, we just come to you today. Thank you so much for the opportunity to gather, the opportunity to be put in the position to lead. Lord, we know that that's something that we've seen through your people year after year after year, of century after century after century, Lord, where you just empower people to do your work. So, Lord, I pray that you work through us today. You are in complete control over everything. And Lord, we just hand everything over to you as you work through us. So, Lord, we pray for you. I thank you for all these people in this room as they make decisions, have great conversations, and work to something better. So, Lord, we love you and we thank you. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. And you're welcome to stay if you like. We'll now entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Is there one? Mr. Hyman.
I'll make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Mr. White.
Second the motion.
Thank you. A properly seconded motion to approve the agenda as it is set forth. All in favor with a show of hands, please. And the motion carries unanimously. While I'm thinking about it, I just have been told by people who are tuning in, who are not physically present, that they have some difficulty hearing us. So to the extent that you can remember, and will do so, please direct your voice into your mic. The presence of a mask doesn't help at all, so we want to make sure that people understand and hear what we're saying. Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, have we satisfied those requirements of the Freedom of Information Act?
We have.
Thank you so much. I'd also like to announce that we do have a quorum. All members of council are present and accounted for. And now relative to the consent agenda, is there a motion? Ms. Kims.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Jordan.
Second.
We have a properly seconded motion to also approve the consent agenda. All in favor with a show of hands. And that motion also carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Moving forward to item 5, special presentation. We will hear a discussion on tree preservation, on the tree preservation ordinance by Ms. Wanda Lilly. Good afternoon, Ms. Lilly.
Hi.
So the original intent for the tree ordinance, which has been in place in various forms for 35 years, was to allow us to be a Tree City USA, which I'm proud that we just got that recognition last month for 35 years. That's pretty fantastic. Yeah, I'm kind of short. I'm trying not to touch stuff too. Some of the intent for the original tree ordinance is to protect the trees and woodlands, including other forms of vegetation, for their economic support of local property values and their natural beauty, wilderness character, or geological, ecological, or historical significance. To address the public concern, which is great, for these valued natural resources in the interest of health, safety, and general welfare of the residents of the city of Conway. To encourage the beautification and air cooling and purification, noise abatement, property value, enhancement, and other attributes of trees within the city. Just a little brief thing about some of the trees that are protected in the tree world. It's called diameter at breast height, which is measured 4.5 feet up from the tree from side to side. That's how you correctly measure a tree. So in the 4-inch category, which is small, is the dogwood, the crepe myrtle, the red bud. The 8-inch category is the American holly, the live oak, southern magnolia, red maple, bald cypress, river birch, sycamore. All other types of oaks are 14 inches and greater. Those are the trees that are all protected on public and private land within the city. So, is there any questions?
How do you take one down?
If you, the rules differ from commercial to residential. If you are a residential citizen, then you just call, set up an appointment, come out, take a look. The tree would have to meet certain criteria for the removal. Criteria being tree is dead, dying, diseased, doing any kind of structural damage to your home, have an insect infestation that would definitely carry on to other trees, roof damage, broken limbs.
Excuse me, might the damage be potential as opposed to already underway?
That would be a bit tricky, but yes, ma'am.
Not like something may happen 10 years from now as it grows.
Exactly.
Right.
I think we've been very fair in our assumption of what is potential.
I don't doubt that at all. Mr. White?
In relation to a storm or anticipated storm, could an individual on personal private property limb up or prune some of the limbs off of his or her trees that might be one of these that are listed here?
Absolutely. The only tree that requires a permit for pruning is a landmark live oak. So we're back to the diameter at breast height, and that's 30 inches, and probably, somewhat this podium size.
And at 30 inches, at the 4-foot cutoff, about what is the age of that landmark? I mean, that tree.
That's quite variable upon, the circumstances where it's growing in the woods versus one out in your yard, the rainfall. But a 30-inch and greater tree, a 30-inch, would probably be at least 100 years old.
I see. That's what I was digging for. Mr. Hyman?
And I'm going to say this up front. I'm all for tree ordinances. That's I don't want anybody to think I'm saying otherwise. But was looking at the exemptions from the chapter, and I saw some of the stuff about silviculture. And one of the things that kind of caught my eye was it's D2. Activities occurring on the tract must be devoted of the production of marketable forest products. Now, what does that mean?
Well, that's true silviculture, and the land probably would be zoned farming, which we have, I don't even know what percentage, less than 2 definitely, that is zoned like that within the city limits of Conway. It's not typically silviculture land. That would be land that is, you're growing trees, probably pine trees, loblolly pines, for the production of removing them 10, 15, 20 years and replanting.
Now, but the pines aren't protected there, right?
They are not.
So I guess what I'm saying is if you had a parcel that was, this is 5 acres, but a parcel that was 6 acres, and it was covered in oaks, and I'm not talking about live oaks, but river oaks, and you wanted to sell the hardwoods on it, could you?
You're speaking of a true silviculture situation?
That's what I'm asking. I mean,
No, I don't know of anybody who really does silviculture in the oak family.
okay.
That's primarily just pines.
That was my question, is why it was in here if it just dealt with pines and we're not protecting pines. That was kind of why I was wondering that.
That was just to protect from total clearing. So the city would not be out of the loop if somebody intended to do that.
Okay.
Mr. Hyman, would you give us a reference again? I'm not able to find where you are.
It is section 3413D, and then it's page 57. Well, on mine it's 57.
Okay. 13D.
3413D, silviculture so long as the following conditions are met as exemptions from this chapter.
Those are federal laws which supersede ours.
The silviculture?
Mhm.
Okay. The other question I had dealt with mitigation. I know you, what is it, diameter, breast height? Is that what you were saying?
That's the correct measurement.
Okay. And so that's on page 55. As far as that goes, correct me if I'm wrong, but if somebody was to build a church, something, and there were trees that were 4 through 6 in diameter, they would have to replace them with trees in 2 inches in depth in diameter if they're protected. And then if they're 7 inches or greater, they'll have to replace them with 4-inch trees, correct?
That may be correct. It depends on the site, and we certainly work with the individual, because the whole idea is for them to be happy with the trees that are on their land.
Right. So does it have to be the same type tree?
No, it does not.
So they could replace oaks with birches or something like that?
Absolutely. And I definitely advise that when I'm out doing a consultation, because we need to keep our tree diversity up and not be planting continuously crepe myrtle or maple.
And the reason I ask is, a 4-inch birch, I'm assuming is going to be a lot cheaper than a 4-inch live oak. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that a 4-inch live oak would probably be very expensive. Is that where we get where it says alternate fee amount? Is for mitigation, it says there's an alternate. It says current nursery market value.
Yes, the current, because that is very fluctuating. The majority of our trees are coming from Florida, so transportation is going up. So we try to stick within the reasonable market value.
So if it was replaced with a 4-inch and the tree was $350 or something like that, then that would be what they would pay as an alternate fee instead of planting the tree.
No, they would pay $450.
$450.
Yep. But I definitely encourage them to replant rather than pay the fee.
That's assuming they can replant though, right? I mean, like if they're building a building and they're taking trees out where the building is, it might be kind of hard to replant.
Well, there's still another option. If you're dealing with a small amount of trees, they can donate the tree to the city for the city to plant on city parcels.
And that's any kind of tree though, as far as that? Or do we?
As long as it meets the size requirement.
But if they don't do that, it's $450 a tree,
For a 4-inch tree.
4-inch tree. What's our cost on a 2-inch?
It depends on the species of the tree, perhaps $150.
Okay.
And on the purchase end of things, you don't go by diameter at breast height, you go by caliper.
Caliper? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, you touched on the difference between residential and commercial. We didn't get to commercial. Could you go through that, please? The criteria?
Well, the criteria kind of would be the same, but the trees may differ because the trees may have been planted, probably would have been planted to meet a different regulation, such as an island in the parking lot, a buffer. So the tree may be protected from that sense.
I guess what I'm asking is like, touch on what Alex said, you got a 6-acre tract and it's a commercial tract. Is the regulations different if it were zone commercial rather than residential?
No.
Okay. And thank you for painting.
You're very good.
Are there any other questions or comments?
There we go. Okay, and I think this discussion arose specific to a situation that's come about lately where the developer's claiming that, because of other things that the city's requiring, it's gonna, this is raw land. It's my understanding, it's never been cut down. A number of trees are gonna have to be taken out to build retention ponds, for instance. And so, in that case, obviously it's a commercial application. And they're just in a situation where they can either, you're saying plant those trees that they take out or pay the
Mitigation fee,
mitigation fee.
yes.
Okay.
And those trees that, for the mitigation purpose, would be in addition to all other required trees for their landscaping.
And I think the issue here, and I'm not very familiar with the property or the issue for that matter, but is that it's just a huge financial burden. They want to develop this property and it currently exists as a plot of woods. And for them to do that, they would have to cut these trees down.
Well, you touched on a very good point when you first started speaking about stormwater. One tree in an urban environment can uptake 6,000 gallons of water per year. That's huge.
That's a lot of water.
That's a lot of water. That's a lot of water. So to give you another analogy, if you were speaking of a 1-inch precipitation rainfall event, which is not uncommon in our area, an acre of forest land, you would have 750 gallons of runoff. An acre of parking lot, you would have 27,000 gallons of water. Stormwater is huge. Trees are the answer.
Mr. Harmon?
I guess my biggest concern, and while I completely agree with you on that, what I'm seeing now is county property being bought and then completely clear cut before it's coming into the city, because they're saying our city tree ordinance is such that they have to do that. And I don't think they have to. I don't think that's the case. But if there was a 60-acre tract and it's covered in river oaks and they want to develop that, they could potentially have negative equity in the property value based on the mitigation costs. Depending on how they do it. So like I said, I completely agree with you. I'm just trying to figure out how do we balance this to make it so that property coming into the city, that's not happening to, because that's certainly, I don't think what anybody wants. But that's unfortunately what is happening. And when they're coming in, I know we require landscaping, but those are all new trees. It's not, I don't know, what's an average size river oak at DD? I mean, was that 20 inches maybe in diameter, 25 inches? And I'm assuming those bigger trees will drink more water than the small ones.
Absolutely, and they're far more valuable.
Right. Well, I talked with a timber guy today about it, and I don't think they are. They're more valuable to us, but as far as what their timber value is, it's about $60 a tree. So $60 versus $450, it's not really a trade-off. Again, I think it's much more valuable standing upright, drinking water. But like I said, I'm not against a tree ordinance. I'm just trying to figure out how we can balance it to help everybody.
Ms. Timms?
I'm going to ask a question, and I really do not know the answer to this one. Usually I don't do that. But when in our tree ordinance, when we have developers that clear cut a parcel that is in the county and then attempts to put it into the city, what are our regs for making them clean it up? Because that doesn't always happen. I mean, is there something in the ordinance that says what they have to do after they clear cut it? They just leave it piled up in a heap or what?
Well, typically they would be clear cutting for a purpose,
Right.
a subdivision or whatever. So usually they would clean it up just as good stewards of the land.
And we don't really have anything in our tree ordinance that addresses that. Our property maintenance code, sometimes the code inspectors will go out to those developments.
Well, I mean, I can look around town and I can see because of the virus or because of the economy, because of a lot of things, maybe they have not moved forward with plans the way they thought they might have. And now the land is sitting in a fairly disreputable fashion, which I'm sure is not what we intended. How do we fix that?
And again, it's something that we've been handling as part of the property maintenance, but if we needed to write something stricter into the tree ordinance, that's absolutely something.
Well, I think perhaps we might, nobody knew these times were going to take place. We just probably need a contingency somewhere that doesn't just let it sit.
One thing that happens a lot of times is I think Mr. Hyman brought it up too, is a developer may clear cut it in the county and then annex into the city.
Right.
It may not be in relation to the economic times that they've allowed it to just sit there. It might just be that they had no intention of developing right now anyway. And what happens then is they will let it grow back up into some sort of semi-wild status again until they're ready to develop it. It's much easier to clear small trees with a brush hog than it would be to clear a whole tract with chainsaws. So they're willing to take that risk and leave it sit that way. We have the ability for property maintenance to make them do some maintaining, mowing and things like that. I don't know that we have the ability to make someone come in and continuously brush hog a 200-acre tract.
Well, I'm not sure that's what I would recommend either, but you would think that there would be some standard.
I don't know that there is.
Should there be?
Could write one.
Well, I'd be for that.
Well, just let me add to that. I don't know what parcel you're speaking of, but in some wetland situations, they're allowed to remove a tree, but not stump, which is kind of.
In the county, they
Please
need a
finish that
different permit.
sentence.
Yeah.
Which is, what do you want to say about that?
Excuse me.
About leaving the stump?
the purpose.
I don't know what their logic was.
There's a different permit required at the county for clearing the stump as well, or just cutting down the tree. Also, they need a land disturbance permit for one and not for the other. So oftentimes you'll see the stumps left behind because it doesn't disrupt the soil as much as cutting down and removing everything. It's also cheaper.
This conversation isn't new, and one of the things I've spoken to Adam about some months ago, maybe a year or so ago, had to do with our developing a plan that would help us to mitigate those losses that we have when people do clear cut and then come in, making it very difficult for them to move forward. And there are ways to do that. If I can think of ways, as little as I know about trees and about development, then I think that that's something we could come up with. My only angst is that we tend to try to correct the problem when there's a single situation with a developer. I would rather us look at this thing for the uniqueness of this issue that we're faced with, and take the time to do it right. Take the time to look at how we can make it more difficult for developers to do that clear cutting and come in, to restrict them and there are a number of things that the city can put in place to make that not as appealing to the developer. It'll take some time, it'll take some study, it'll take some work on our part, but it can be done. I'm sorry, Mr. White.
I think you took my
I'm
thunder.
sorry.
In that I was thinking the same thing. Just if a person wants to clear cut something, do we as the city have to allow them to enter the city?
I mean, the flip side of that is, do you want to keep residents out? Tax revenues that would potentially come from development. That's where, I mean, you kind of have to weigh it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the another way to look at it is to say the max on a tree ordinance is going to be this per acre. So you don't get a situation where somebody has an acre and there's a $30,000 bill on it for tree mitigation. I mean, if you have that, and I don't know what that number would be, I'm just saying, but if you set it and say, listen, the max you're going to have to pay, it seems like in that instance, they would immediately say, okay, well then we're not going to clear cut it. We'll look at it. I don't know. I don't know if that's the right answer, but it's.
Well, that's a part of what I'm saying, and I absolutely agree with you. It's going to take some work on our parts to sit and put in front of us all the considerations and something that makes some sense just in terms of limiting the appeal to take the route that we all are disgusted with and come up with a better plan. But one that's reasonable as well. Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Goldstein.
I agree with all of you, and I want to subscribe to what you're speaking to as well. I guess I just, and I mentioned this came up because of a particular development, but you're right. This is not for that development. This is to be clear across the board, right? So that folks understand what our rules are. And I guess my biggest issue is is making it, we don't not want nice developments to happen because they're cost prohibitive, because we're essentially fining people for developing their own property. That's fundamentally at odds with just the way I process the world. And Adam and I had talked about what Ms. Tryman just brought up about putting a cap on it, but if I own 2 or 3 or 4 acres and I want to make that a nice commercial application, and in doing so, I've got to have retention ponds and this and that and everything else. And I take the trees that I need to, and I rack up tens of thousands of dollars in essentially fines or fees because I'm doing what the city tells me I've got to do. I've got to put in the stormwater. I've got to put in the retention pond. I've got to put in additional landscaping, and I'm expected to replace all of the trees that I cut down. Well, how can I do that if I've got to put in a stormwater retention pond or this or that? And I just think we need to find some balance there, because we certainly don't want to penalize people who want to develop nice things in our community. I don't think that's anybody's intent, but I think that's what's happening. And we just need to find some middle ground there.
And I think with us partnering in the sense that we're developing something that makes sense, that some of that could be avoided in the development process, in the design. I don't know how much of it could be avoided that way, but that's part of it. We just need to rethink all the factors. Mr. Hyman.
And I'm just somewhat echoing what William said, but, you know, I don't want you in any way think I'm pointing any fingers at you, because that's not it at all. I think you do a fantastic job. I think there are potentially issues in the actual ordinance. But one other question I had, and this gets asked, I've had this asked a couple times, and it's a great thing. What are the requirements? Like, what do we do to be recognized as a tree city? I know right as soon as I think I came on, we got an award for being a tree city. And I know that's something we've had now for what, 35 years. What are the requirements for us to, I want to continue to keep that, and I don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize that.
Well, we, according to the Census Bureau, the amount of citizens that are in the city, we have to spend $2 per capita. We have to have a tree ordinance. We have to have a tree board. And an arborist on staff.
A very good one, we might add. Yeah.
Mayor,
yes, please.
I want to piggyback on something you just said, because, and we're not Mount Pleasant, don't want to be Mount Pleasant, but you talked about the way developers can design things before going into a project. And it made me think about, if you're riding on 17 in Mount Pleasant, particularly further north in the newer developments, you'll notice that they don't clear cut. You know, for instance, y'all know where the mellow mushroom is and all that stuff. All those trees out front, it's like it's a buffer, and then you've got the development. And the same thing on the other side of the road. And so there are ways to do that. You're absolutely right. And while I've got the microphone, thank you. Every time I call you and say, Joe Citizen needs a phone call, you're on it, and they're very happy. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you very much. And it's called green infrastructure and maintaining some open space. But just to note, one more thing about Mount Pleasant is the middle of the roads, they had a stormwater problem. So in their middle islands, they purposely directed their stormwater to go to the middle of the island to water all their plantings in the middle of the road. So that's how they handled their road runoff.
Wow.
I imagine that was a nightmare dealing with DOT on that.
I'm sure.
They only let you do, what is it? You can't do a tree, it has to be a bush.
Not a trunkless species or
Something, yeah.
All right.
So either you get the increase in stormwater for not having the trees and the pollutants and the runoff and the extra carbon in the atmosphere from not having the trees, or you have the trees to do all the work all by themselves.
Just to add on to what both Mr. Hyman and Mr. Goldfinch said about our discussion, we're all reminded that it was the council itself that put the ordinance in place. We okayed it, having heard from whoever was involved at the time. But I can't imagine us having anybody more capable of supporting this ordinance and trying to enforce it than you. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? I think if I could sum this up, I think there's work for staff and the council to do. I think this is a wonderful opportunity. Sometimes one development brings things to mind, tells us where we are, what we will face repeatedly unless we act on it, and maybe there's something that makes sense that sits in the middle. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Thank you all.
And I just need to say that for whatever reason, my pages do not fit with anybody else's. And I was missing that 13 that you mentioned, Alex. Anyway, we'll see about that later.
I printed it at my office, so, and it's front and back, so maybe that's the problem.
Okay, right. I went from part 12 to part 14. It just isn't there at all. For now, item 5B, a discussion of temporary sign ordinance. Mr. Emmerich.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You'll have an issue paper in front of you that's very brief on our temporary sign ordinance. But essentially, let me recap. In 2011, there was a Supreme Court case called Reed versus the Town of Gilbert, which struck down just about every temporary sign ordinance in the country. The temporary sign ordinances traditionally differentiate between types of signs with different sets of regulations. And I've got a quick PowerPoint. They differentiate between different types of signs. Like, for instance, we have, I think, 7 different types of temporary signs in our ordinance. Temporary business signs, like, for instance, the famous Starbucks coming soon sign.
Is it still there?
No, it's gone.
You got a new one. There's a new sign out there.
Does it say Starbucks again?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God.
Reconsidering.
I'm not going to even comment on that. But you can see that we regulate the temporary signage in terms of size, height, duration, where they can be, how they must be placed, and how long they can be there, and how many you can have per year. We regulate temporary construction signs. Those are the signs if you've got a new roof coming, your roofing company can put a sign in your yard saying here's a new roof. Again, size, height, duration, how many you can have, they're all regulated. Temporary event signs. You got the Veterans Day parade coming up, not this year, I know, but normally we'd have the veteran signs up. Those are regulated differently than the others. Real estate signs, this house is for sale. There's regulations for that. That's different than the subdivision signs. You might be selling a brand new subdivision. You've got a 4x8 sheet of plywood out there saying there's 120 units left starting at 200,000. They have limits on how long they can be there, when they need to be removed. I have the wrong number on there. I'm going to move fast past it.
500%.
500%. No one saw that I moved very quickly.
That's a developer's dream.
And then there's political signs, which is, I think, really what spurred this discussion. I'm going to come back to that in a second. And then going out of business signs or having a grand opening sign. All these are regulated slightly different, but very similarly, as you saw in that quick PowerPoint. But the way what the Supreme Court said is if you have to read the sign to determine which category it goes in, it is content based and not content neutral, which means it fails the First Amendment test and is illegal for us to regulate in that way. So our temporary sign ordinance since that 2011 case has been basically unconstitutional. We enforce the aspects of the temporary sign ordinance in ways that are not unconstitutional. For instance, it is illegal to put a sign in the right of way, and most temporary signs that are illegal anyway are placed in the right of way. So we have the right within our ordinance to remove those signs in the public right of way. And that's how we typically enforce the temporary sign ordinance. If you drive down Elm Street right now, I know there's at least one house that has 2 signs in their front yard, which technically would be illegal. I think they're getting a new roof and something else. That's technically illegal. We won't enforce that right now because we can't legally do so. The political signs are sort of a sticky wicket. If we don't regulate them, we'll get ourselves in a situation where you have 700 signs in one person's yard. And that's not good for the community. It's bad for aesthetics. And it doesn't further the goal of that candidate either. Our current political sign ordinance regulates how soon you can put them up before the election, how fast you must take them down after the election, how big they can be, where they can be on your property. If you put one inside your house in the window, you can have as many as you want. If you put it in your yard, it can't be in the right of way. You can only have 1 per candidate in your yard. Even if you have a corner lot, it can still only be 1 per candidate. They can only be, I think, 4 square feet. So, I mean, we regulate all that. To get around the temporary sign restrictions that are placed by the Supreme Court, there is no good rewrite of a sign ordinance. The reason we haven't done it is because there isn't a good one. No one's come up with a model ordinance to fix this issue. What I would suggest we do, and what I'm going to present to you right now in very short framework, is the way to fix it is to get rid of our temporary sign ordinance altogether, eliminate it, and then rewrite an ordinance that defines a political sign. Number one, a political sign isn't really a temporary sign. If it's up there for 30, 60 days, if there's another election, they can leave it up as a runoff. It is not necessarily a defined duration. It is so many days before an election, so many days after the conclusion of that election, but it could have multiple iterations if there's runoff and such. And typically that lasts longer than what a temporary sign is of 30 days. So we can differentiate a political sign as a non-temporary sign. It is a sign. We can then get rid of the temporary sign ordinance and tell anyone that they can have a sign that is not otherwise permitted in this ordinance of one per yard. So a political sign is different, but one per yard. That could be a residential yard or a commercial yard. So if you're at McDonald's and you're driving through the drive-through and you see now hiring, that's one sign. That means they can't put a second sign that says iced coffee 99 cents, and then another one that says quarter pounders $2, and then a third one that says something else, and so on and so forth. That may or may not be what the council wants, but I'm not sure how we can regulate it in a different way. So I need some input from you, but I think we've got to be, we're finally at the point now where we need to address this. And and I know that there was some concern about the political signage, so we can address it at the same time of time, place, manner, and that sort of thing. So,
Please
yes.
say again how we can make that differentiation. When the Gilbert case said, if you have to read it to know the difference, then
Well, it's a very narrow path I'm walking.
yeah.
The Gilbert case was tailored specifically for temporary signs. And it was the same ordinance we have with 7 different types of temporary signs. That case also said that you, in the dicta, in the confirming opinions, but the concurring opinions, it said that, we still think that there's a right to regulate off-premises sign versus on-premises sign. But if there is the right to regulate on-premises versus off-premises, the only way to do that is to read the sign. So the Supreme Court, even in its own opinion, had some mixed messages to the cities that regulate these things. So the way I'm proposing it is we walk that same line that they did and said that it was narrowly tailored to temporary sign ordinances, and we're getting rid of ours. Our right-of-way enforcement will stay the same. That one's an easy one, and that will manage the majority of the problems. We could just not regulate temporary signs at all and let people do it and see if it becomes a problem, and if it does, then we regulate it. We know it can be a problem. We've seen it in other jurisdictions. So by failing to do anything, it might put us in a situation pretty quickly. But we could, even that Starbucks sign, it was a violation of our temporary sign ordinance because it was up there for a year. It's only allowed to be up there for a limited duration, and they never pulled a permit for it. So technically it was illegal from day one.
Well, and it depends on, I suppose, what it is we're trying to regulate. When it comes to political signs specifically, there are residences in town today that don't have multiple signs for one candidate, but have 5 different candidates in their yard.
And that's legal under our current ordinance.
Which is ridiculous because it's the same problem as clutter. It's junk. Mr. Goldfinch.
It is, and the law used to be, this was long before the courts got involved, but you could have a political sign up for 30 days in advance of the election. And there was a city election, and one of the contesters wanted it, complained about it, and so council at some point years ago moved it to 60 days. It's, you see the most signs for local elections. I mean, you just do, and they look horrible a month in. And that was why I brought it up. 30 days is plenty. If that's the rule, everybody's going to play by the rule, and you have 30 days to have you sign up, and that's it.
Can I address political signs real quick?
Please.
There are a number of issues in regulating political signs. I'm going to jump ahead to my administrator report because I had it as one of my bullet points. Reminding people who work for campaigns that the signs can only be placed on property that you have permission to put them on. And they can't be in the right of way. They can't be on public property. They have to be on private property. Last week, our zoning staff picked up more than 100 signs from Church Street, from a section of Church Street. They were all in the right of way. All 168 signs were in the right of way. While those were being placed, one of our staff members saw the person putting them up and stopped and said, "Those are all illegal. You need to take them down." And of course he didn't. He ignored the instructions of staff. So we picked them up the next day. That put our staff, number one, in harm's way because they're walking in the right of way trying to pick up these signs in a different traffic pattern. It was much more busy. And it took 2 staff members the entire morning to do it. So taxpayers paid to pick up the signs that someone else used as litter. I think we can all agree that I don't know if y'all saw them, but they looked horrible. That's one of the banes of my existence. I've picked up signs since I started this job. I picked them up before I worked for the city, but that was quasi legal. There's nothing that irritates me more and gives me more satisfaction at the same time than picking up 30 or 40 signs that Conway singles that likes to put them out on Labor Day and Memorial Day, thinking that no one will get them. Yeah, I'm going to get them. The stump grinder guys, that drives me crazy. They put them up so high we can't reach them. I made a special tool to get those signs down out of the things.
Out by your house.
There's no difference between those. This is where I agree with the Supreme Court. There's no difference between those guys and the guys putting up the political signs.
All right.
Except for the guys putting up the political signs usually live in the city and will call you or call us to complain when we take their signs. And typically the rule is if we take a political sign, we leave it in the back of the truck and they can come get it out whenever they want and put it out again. Except the exception to my rule is when we tell you to take it down yourself and you didn't do it. And then they go straight in the garbage. And that's what happened the other day. I understand they're expensive. I understand that a lot of times the people that are working the campaign bought those signs in helping the other candidate. But if you're putting them in the right of way, you're littering. And we are very close to writing the tickets for each one of those. And if you complain about it, that's what's going to happen. So it's $1,100 fine for violating that ordinance times each sign.
That's what we need to have happen a time or two.
Yeah.
That would fix it.
Last presidential election, Jessica Hux and I spent an entire day picking up signs on 501, more than 200 of them. And I enjoyed it, but it was very dangerous and it was unnecessary. So that's one side of the political sign that's different than anything else. The other side is people are very, very attached to their political signs. That is their heart. So much so that there is a new breed of political signs that are flags, yard ornaments, things that aren't typical political signs that probably will be up for the next 4 years, depending on who gets elected. And I don't know that we have the ability to go onto people's property and take their flags and decorations, but that is political signage. And it certainly will be up longer than whatever we put on as a rule. And there is a new level of hostility associated with those political signs that we are putting ourselves in more danger every time we pick one up.
That's right.
So I don't know what the solution is to that, but I mean, if people just didn't put them in the right of way, it would save a lot of heartburn for our staff and a lot of danger.
So there's no way to do away with them altogether.
No, it is political speech. HOAs do it, but I don't think the city can do that. I see Alex over
Mr.
there.
Hyman, I'm sorry.
Can we require when you file that you be responsible for your signage?
I believe that is the case. In fact, the first thing that happens when someone files for a local election is we give them the handout that says what the signage rules are. And for 80% of the people who run, they throw that right in the garbage, or they don't read it because they start immediately.
Find the candidate.
Yeah,
And I'm not saying that.
we could write both Trump and Biden a pretty big ticket tomorrow.
They've raised a lot of money.
When he's done.
So two issues here. You've got the right-of-way issue, which is an inconvenience for you guys, but it's really not an issue. It's illegal. That's
It's easy to regulate.
That's
right.
crystal clear.
Yeah.
So that's a separate issue than signs on private property.
Right.
And I would love to see us just change our ordinance back to the way it used to be for 30 days in advance of an election. And whoever files, because there's some signs out in people's yards now around town, but what I'm talking about is municipal elections. That's when you see hundreds and hundreds of signs out. And, anyway, that's my input. That's what I'd like to see happen.
That's an easy change.
It's a very easy change.
But at the same time, we have to change the whole thing to do that.
Why?
Because there's no point in just changing the temporary political sign because we can't enforce it anyway.
Yeah, right.
So we need to write a standalone ordinance for political signage, get rid of the temporary sign ordinance at the same time.
Okay.
And that won't violate the Gilbert case.
I think
Not
it might,
immediately.
but
Hello, Greg.
Mr. Hyman,
Mayor, at the appropriate time, if there's no other questions for him, I would make a motion that we delete the temporary sign ordinance in its entirety.
There's no
But
motion
this is
needed,
just-
just instruction to work on that. That'd be great.
so
Before
We need to-
leave this,
go ahead, Ms. Timms.
one of the things that we're most concerned about is the putting out of it, but the taking up of them is,
We often
Not-
find the candidates that lose don't pick up their signs. And either we pick them up or they sit there and rot.
frequently that's the case. I mean, they're out there months after. And, you know, it's not our place to have to pick them up, and I don't want us to do the work that other people should do, but I don't know. If we write anything at all, please put in something with reference to taking down, not just putting up.
One thing I think we could do is at the time that our local candidates file, we have them sign something acknowledging the sign ordinance that they will be fined if they violate it or if their campaign workers violate it. I don't know that it's enforceable that way, but we could try it. And that would require our clerk to have that ready for it.
Sure. Let's go.
No, I think that'd be a great idea. And I think what Ms. Timms is talking about is a lot of these state and county elections where you hire somebody to go just stick signs out. With the local elections, most of them are in somebody's yard. And if,
Yeah.
you know, like I had mine picked up at 7:45 the next morning, but if you don't, and you've got one in my yard, I'm going to pull it out of the yard when it's over with. So I don't think that's much of an issue for local elections as it is for your larger elections where things are spread out. But
Still make it part of it. Oh, I agree.
Anyone else?
Well, somebody is representing these people that are not the local people running, and they're putting out these signs, so they got to get them up.
We, and I personally did this, email both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party at the beginning of this campaign season and reminded them of our ordinance. Usually there is an event at the Peanut Warehouse I think it's every other political season. So the non-local elections, and usually they put out hundreds of signs in downtown. And I usually the one that pull them because we're on Saturday. And that's always an enjoyable event too. So.
The things you like out of them.
I know.
Concerned
Just
about
think how
you.
much fun we let you have.
Yeah.
Just be safe.
Thank
Just
you.
be safe.
I took a piece of sign post, like you put a stop sign on, and I flattened one end of it so I could slide it up underneath it. And the other end I crimped into a circle and wrapped it in tape so it didn't hurt my hand. And then I just slide it up the pole and it knocks the sign off and I catch it and move on.
Stop sign posts are heavy.
They are. It's not easy, but it's fun. Yeah. Yeah. I thought about patenting it, but it's not convenient.
Just get you a hoe and straighten the
I mean, that would work too. I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
all I had.
All right. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you so much. So if we don't need a motion, how do you get a sense that is I'm feeling that might be the sense of,
I will bring
The
it back
council.
for a review prior to it going to
Okay.
planning commission for an amendment. Sort of like we do typical, you see the amendment before it goes through
Yes.
the work. So you'll see the amendment coming back as a discussion item before
and
it
then,
comes for review.
wonderful. We have a chance to speak to our pleasure or displeasure.
Correct.
All right. I don't expect any. I just wanted to make sure that there's an opportunity.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. We are at item 6, public input. Is there anyone, would you please check Ms. Woods and see if there's anyone, is it Wood or Woods? Wood, I'm so sorry, Ms. Wood, and see if there's anybody waiting to offer input. Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Has anyone contacted you to present on their behalf? Any public input?
No.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hubbard,
Motion to close public input.
thank you so much, Mr. Hyman.
Second.
Properly seconded motion to close public input at this time. All in favor with a show of hands, please. And we have one member missing, but those of us in the room have all unanimously agreed. We are now at item 7, public hearing and first reading of amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance, UDO, Article 6, relative to uses in the professional district. Ms. Hutz. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. All right. So this amendment came about after a resident purchased a home in the city and was unable to obtain a business license to operate a salon from the same location. The parcel where the home is located is zoned professional, which allows either a residential use or professional uses, including salons, but does not allow a mix of these uses on the same parcel. The Unified Development Ordinance allows home-based businesses, provided that services which are not office-related are conducted off-site. The home-based business ordinance does not allow customers to receive services at the business location, nor does it permit accessory structures to be used in conjunction with the home-based business. The issue was discussed at the June 15th council meeting, where it was agreed that the home-based business ordinance was intended for residentially zoned neighborhoods and shouldn't allow a mix of both residential and commercial. However, since the professional district already allows either a residential or commercial use, council suggested that the professional district could provide and allow the needed mix of uses. Upper floor residential dwellings are already permitted in the central business district, core commercial, and Waccamaw riverfront districts, provided they are complete and independent living facilities. With the proposed amendment, mixed uses on parcels in the professional district that allow customers on site would be reviewed as a commercial project and would be subject to all requirements set forth in the Unified Development Ordinance, including design standards, parking, ADA accessibility, landscaping, and building code requirements. Such uses must also be compliant with any state regulations that may exist for the intended use. Planning Commission reviewed the proposed amendment at their July and September meetings and recommended approval of the proposed amendment. And it was also discussed at council at the September 21st meeting. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Thank you so much. Are there questions?
This is a public hearing as
Oh,
well.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Before we get to questions, is there anyone present? Ms. Wood, if you
I
would.
just checked, Mayor, there's not.
Thank you so much. We'll entertain a motion and to close the public hearing. Mr. White.
I move that we close public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. James. Probably seconded motion to close the public hearing on this matter. All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. And now, Council, Mr. Goldfin.
Mayor, I move that we approve first reading of said ordinance.
Mr. Hyman.
I would second Mr. Goldfinch's motion.
We're probably seconded motion to approve staff's recommendation, recommended proposed amendments to Article 6. Is there any discussion? There being none, all in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much, Ms. Hux. I know that you worked really hard on this one, and we thank you for all of your effort. Item 8, first reading. First reading of an ordinance to annex approximately a third acre of property located at 104 Clemson Road, PIN 383-100400001, and to request a rezone from Horry County Residential to City of Conway Low Density Residential R1. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, this is a request. It was a recent change in ownership, and therefore to continue the city services and utilities, they have requested annexation.
Thank you, ma'am. What's the will, Mr. Hyman?
Mayor, if there's, I don't know if Mr. White was going to ask a question. I was just going to, Mayor, I'd make a motion that we approve first reading for the annexation.
Thank you so much. We'll entertain a second and Mr. Jordan.
Second.
Thank you. We have a probably second motion. And now for discussion, Mr. White.
Yes, the other properties around there that are in white, are they also in the city limits?
They are actually in the county. The kind of off-white yellow are in the city. So this is an area that's half city, half county. We have annexed, I think 2 or 3 other parcels within the past year or so along the street. So it's one that we're slowly filling.
So we are trying to close the donut hole or open it?
We're trying to close it on this street. Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else? There being no further discussion, I'll call a vote. All in favor with a show of hands, please. First reading passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Item B is first reading of an ordinance to annex approximately a quarter acre of property located at 2647 Oak Street, PIN 325-150400124, and request a rezone from Horry County Residential to City of Conway Low Density Residential R1. Ms. Hartman.
Yes, this is a similar situation. The property was recently purchased. They did have some concerns, this property owner, about this. They weren't aware they would need to annex. But as you know, we recently annexed the parcels across the street. So that has triggered that this area also would require annexation with a change of ownership.
Thank you, ma'am. What's the will of the council? I move that we approve first reading of this ordinance. Ms. Jams?
Second.
We have a properly seconded motion to approve first reading. Is there any discussion?
Same comment.
Yes,
on
sir,
this.
Mr. White.
Are we encouraging the others to come into the city limits as well?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? With the discussion being had, all in favor with a show of hands, please. And this first reading also is approved unanimously. Item 9 is final. I'm sorry.
I said, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hyman. Item 9, final reading. Final reading of ordinance 2020-1019A, amending the city's budget for fiscal year 2020-2021.
Mayor, this was moved to consent agenda before the meetings. This has actually been approved already.
Thank you so much. Item 10, item for consideration, and this is a consideration of a grant proposal. Mr. Rogers.
And Mayor, before John begins, I'm just going to let everyone know there's a potential conflict of interest with me on this one. So I will disclose that I had nothing to do with this issue paper or reviewing any of the grants.
All right.
And I will not participate in the discussion.
Thank you so much. Mr. Rogers, how are you?
Good evening. As you know, as part of the current annual budget, the city of Conway established a fund to support economic development programs in the city, and we established a grant process to take care of distributing that money. We issued a notice of funding opportunity in early September with a deadline of September 30th. And by that date, we received 2 applications, one from the Theater of the Republic and one from the Conway Chamber of Commerce. We sent follow-up questions asking for clarifications on their grant applications due by October 9th. And before that date, Theater of the Republic contacted us and requested we withdraw their application from consideration. So we reviewed the Chamber of Commerce's application, and which was attached to your packet for your review. And we went through each line item in the budget. They had a fairly detailed application and asked for a total of $150,000, which was the total maximum budget for the project. Staff went through and reviewed it and kind of prioritized what best fit what we were asking for in the notice of funding opportunity, and narrowed it down to 2 items, staffing for 1 economic development position and their multimedia marketing, which includes search engine optimization, digital ads, television, print ads, those little ads that you get when you open any app on your phone, that kind of thing would be targeted to Conway advertising for a total of $100,835.57. And so that's up for staff's consideration tonight.
Thank you, sir. What is the will of the council? Mr. White.
Question. I see it says $62,000 for a staff person. Could we hire a staff person for that amount to do similar work? The city we. And the second part of that, would this be a recurring ask of the city annually?
I'll say, as far as hiring somebody, theoretically, yes. And for the recurring part, I would say that's up to them. What going forward, because of COVID, we delayed this process and got done quickly. Next year, we'll announce the funding opportunity immediately after budget retreat, hopefully, if the economy's back to normal, and with consideration in July, which opens that period up for a lot more consideration. And we will push more innovative programs next time that they're just the thought process to establish those this year didn't exist, or there wasn't enough time. So I would expect the application will be a little different next year.
Thank you.
Interesting questions, Mr. White. Ms. Hubbard.
Did you say staff's recommendation was to approve the grant?
Yes.
Okay.
the amount of $100,835.57.
And while I'm there, what will happen to the remainder of the money?
It's basically up for council to decide at next year's budget retreat. It would return to the general fund.
Oh, I see. That's right.
I move to approve the grant for the chamber.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? That's right.
Second.
Or properly seconded motion to approve. And now for discussion, Mr. Goldman.
Yeah, Mr. White, I was just going to add the advantage for outsourcing this is that, well, it cost us more than 62,000 because of a lot of things, but being tied in to the state and PIBA and all that. But the bigger advantage is that, you know, they can do more things as an outside entity being contracted than possibly as a city employee, you know, taking people out to eat and, you know, showing them, you know, things that, so there, I think there's a big advantage there.
No problem.
Yeah.
I had to ask the
Yep.
question.
Sure. Good question. Okay.
I want to play devil's advocate for just a minute. I'm trying to go back a few years to the point where we were discussing things that we awarded money to the chamber for and what we didn't and this sort of thing. And I thought one of our major objections was that we felt like our money was going straight to salaries. And if this isn't straight to salary, I don't know what is.
Right. And that's one of those things that's up for council's consideration, but of the things that were in their ask, we thought that was probably like I said, we prioritize them as the ones that would have the most direct effect to
Well,
the,
is this not in effect just adding another person to their payroll and us paying for it?
no, this would, from the discussions I had with them, would support the economic development position that's already on staff, which is basically, I believe, what they were, the primary thing they were doing in the past.
And hopefully that time and attention with our support of that position would get more direct benefit to the city.
Right.
As opposed to the chamber that technically serves a much larger area.
Right. And one thing too, in the future, anything that, you know, as we do this process every year, if things that you decide you want to exclude from consideration, we can renew that every year as part of the budget.
Mr. Hyman.
I was just going to say, I remember one of the things we discussed at budget retreat about this was knowing where our money was going, and the economic development aspect of this, at least we know it's benefiting Conway. I mean, it's not going towards a membership to this or membership to that. It's going to a person who's going out and trying to bring business to Conway. So I certainly understand what you're saying too. At least we know with this person working, it is to economically benefit Conway.
And I'll add to that, they will, as part of the grant agreement, if you approve it, they will be required to do a quarterly report and then a final report of precisely what was done with the funding.
And this isn't the greatest investment. It might be a really good opportunity to see what the return is for our money.
Right.
We're not making any long-term commitment. We're doing it this single year.
Right.
Anyone else? I'll call the vote. All in favor with a show of hands, please. So we have, is there anyone opposed? It's not unanimous. We have one member of council in opposition. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. We have moved down to item 11, City Administrator's Report.
My report is shorter now since I talked about the I don't know if any of you went downtown this afternoon or last night, but resurfacing has begun on 4th Avenue. Finally.
I didn't think I'd live to see it.
They got from the water to Elm Street last night. Tonight they'll do from Elm to Beatty and then Beatty down to 3rd on the area that they did on the side street there.
And how much of Main will be redone?
Only the intersection and a little bit back.
Right.
That's
Okay.
right.
Okay.
They plan to have all of the asphalt completely done by this weekend. So if all goes well, it will be done this time next week. It'll be completely done. So knock on wood. I know this isn't news for any of you either, but after upsetting Louisiana Lafayette last week, Coastal is now 4-0 on the season and in the top 25 for the first time in program history. So, exciting.
Go Shots.
And one thing we've talked about briefly in the past, but due to COVID, we are going to need to alter some of our plans for our Christmas events. Partly because of current restrictions from the governor's office, partly because there's not practically a way to do some of the events that we've done in the past. We'd sort of stuck a pin in the Christmas tree lighting plans, but as we get closer to that event, we're at the point now where we no longer can do that event now and have enough time to get it ready. Last year, I think we had 3,000 or 4,000 people crammed into Third Avenue. The plan was to move it to the police station lot this year to give us more room to spread out. And if we were to have an event and advertise an event, we still would have 3,000 or 4,000 people show up for that event. And that would not meet any approvals from the governor's level, nor common sense from a city to do that event, which is unfortunate because it's been growing each year. The plan is to still put the tree on that police lot so that we can start to establish a routine to move people over there. It also gives us something. We're still going to run the train and things like that for the Christmas season. It'll give us that centerpiece for that lot that we've not had before by moving the city tree there. Our city employee Christmas dinner will also likewise be canceled. Last year we had over 400 people RSVP. Gatherings of over 250 people are still prohibited. And we are several weeks past where we would have to start the planning for that event and to be able to have it done in time. So that event cannot take place. We're looking right now for something to replace that is something the employees would like, as well as something that we can do feasibly within the confines of restrictions that we have. So we don't know what that is yet, but we're looking to see what that can be.
How many departments do we have? 7?
More than that. Just at the shop, we've got grounds maintenance, public works, solid waste, public utilities, parks and recreation, admin, finance, building, planning. That's 9. Fire, police is 11.
Okay.
IT is 12.
I don't know how I got 7. I don't know. all
HR
that.
is 13. Yeah.
I'm just thinking, you didn't ask for any ideas, but with some combinations, considering the numbers of departments, I mean, maybe they'll want to plan those things on their own, but
Many departments already have a Christmas dinner that they do internally. So that's already probably going to happen for most departments. That is one of the ideas to see.
if you would ask them, please to invite us.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Certainly. We do have a piece of good news. Last week, we learned that the city received a $51,000 grant from the South Carolina Department of Public Safety to purchase new police radios. The current radios are 12 years old and are no longer supported by the manufacturer, so we can't get parts for them or have them serviced. And there is a small grant match of 10%, which council approved back in March. This has been a grant that we've been looking for a long time. It finally came in last week, and it's a nice big grant for us as well. First time we got this one. And that's it for me tonight. You're going to hear from Ashley Smith, our recreation director, and from Lee Hendrick, our fire chief, unless there's any questions for me.
James?
For a long time, we spent a portion of our energy on different parks, but certainly Collins Park is the one I'm making reference to. And I understand that we are still looking at things there. We used to have a committee that worked with this. I don't know if that's, it hadn't met in years, but I do think that having a way to have input from a variety of sources is a good idea. I'd like to see, we put a lot of emphasis on it, putting statuary and the retreat garden and benches and plaques and all that sort of stuff on one corner. And then we put the fountain in the other corner. And I see a lot of people sitting down around the fountain now. And I would like for us to take a look at pulling away from just that one corner and adding a few pieces of things that would be of interest throughout the park, not just in the retreat garden.
Okay. You.
And if I could just sort of use that as a starting point, what I really like about something that council approved this evening is our willingness to spread the wealth, to make certain that locations that groups of people, look at our pickleball enthusiasts, for example, that we make sure that there is a good spread of the city's resources to make sure that all the parks are growing and becoming nicer and having more amenities over time. I don't disagree with anything for Collins Park. I'm just saying that's one of many.
Sure. Absolutely. All right. I will grab somebody out of the hallway. Excuse me.
Thanks so much, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, we haven't seen you in so long.
Mayor, I'm honored to be here. Council, welcome back to the Conway Sports and Fitness Center. We're glad to have you and host you anytime. I want to give you a brief update of what our department's doing. Our youth athletic numbers compared last year, we had 909 participants. This year we have 775, which is a difference of about 134 kids, which with what's going on is pretty good. Considering that we're really the only recreation department participating in these youth sports, doing it. We're doing it the right way. David Williams and Susan Beckton are out on the courts doing volleyball, doing baseball, and making sure, to the best of our ability, the social distancing and wearing masks. Now, of course, it's tough, but we are doing our best. We're cleaning the facility, cleaning up the benches, that kind of stuff. So we're making sure that our kids and our parents and everybody is safe when we're out there. We're not rogue, just going out to play just to play. And that's the one thing I want you guys to understand, that we're doing it the right way. If we think that it's going to be a problem, then we will address that. But those are our numbers this year. We added fall baseball, which is new. We're trying to just do a lot of different things to get the interest up in our athletics. Our uniforms, we stepped it up a notch. Our football helmets, we do have a thing with a stripe on it where the kids have to earn their stripes to be a Tiger, to kind of promote the Conway community with that. Off of athletics, our membership numbers here, I'll give you this number and it's kind of astounding to me. We have 3,594 active members here. In our classes, since we started, we have 1,805 participants in the classes, which to me, with what everything's going on right now, it's all about our staff, what they're doing. They're making sure that this place is clean and immaculate. And if you look around, and I'll talk about some other stuff later on, but it's amazing what they do. We'll have some events coming up. We'll have a holiday Zumba, October 31st from 9 to 10:15. We'll have our Monster Mash on Mill Pond, our Halloween event, since our other event didn't happen. This is going to be better than anything we've had. We're going to put a lot of energy in that. We're going to actually coordinate a little bit with The Rock. They're having an event also, so we're going to kind of let them tie in with us and have a big Monster Mash here on Mill Pond to do a trunk or treat safely. We'll have some games and different things for the kids. Our Christmas card contest, our deadline will be November the 9th. They'll submit those to our front desk or they can send them online. Caitlin Tiller has told all of our schools, the art teachers, the principals, and got that information out there. I want to thank Miss Roseanne Dates. She's been working hard on some grants for us. She's got us a scoreboard for our girls softball and also an outdoor equipment fitness area that we're going to have that go throughout the park. So we'll have this connected all the way from Pete Wilkes Fields over there down to the other side of the Billy Gardner complex, to where it'll be, it's 1 mile here, 2 mile here. Then you can stop and do push-ups or pull-ups with the different equipment. So we're real excited and we're thankful for Ms. Dates. Other events coming up, we have our Under the Lights 5K, which will be December the 9th. Last year was our first annual, and a lot of you guys were there. A great event. We already have 75 runners signed up for it. 8 sponsors, so that's very exciting for that event. We'll have registration for our youth and Tiny Tiger basketball, which will be a challenge. David Williams, Susan, and myself are going to talk about it because it's a little different basketball with everybody in the gym than baseball and soccer with everybody outside. So those guys have got some great ideas for us to participate and make sure all these kids can play basketball. We're probably not going to be able to get into Conway High School or Conway Elementary, which we've traditionally done because of their standards, and that they don't want people to come in during non-school hours with the COVID. And that's really all I have. But finally, when you guys leave, I want y'all to take a look around the complex. You'll see that fall is in the air. I have, again, my staff is amazing. Janice Hopkins and Mikhail Moody as taking care of all of our decorations. I had nothing to do with it. Just go ahead and throw that out for you, I promise. But it's good when you work with good people and good things happen. So that's my report. Do you guys have any questions?
I want to make a comment.
Okay.
I think you're absolutely right when you say that everybody's concerned about your cleanliness, your standards to help keep them safe when they're here. But there's another reason people are coming in great numbers, and it has to do with the tenor. This place has a new personality. I feel it every time I come. And you and your staff would be just as congratulated for that as anything. You know, it's one thing to do the hands-on work, but there's something else about being welcome when you come. So thank you so much for that.
Yes, ma'am.
I got a question. The stripes, you're gonna earn the stripe. What do you do to earn it?
Well, it could be anything. You could have to do good in school. You can, get an A on your test. You can be nice to a student. It's up to your coach, that kind of thing. But it's not all about athletic ability. So there's a lot more going on in sports than just athletic ability. So we're trying to a well-rounded little tiger.
I know when my son played, a stripe meant you were too big to carry the ball.
No, that's going to be a solid one. Will be that. A stripe short.
Mr. Hyman.
I was just, and this kind of echoes what you were saying, but my daughter plays volleyball, my son plays soccer. I go to all their sporting events, going to be here at 6:30, but definitely feel safe. I don't, at no part of I felt unclean, unsafe. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
And one final thing, I wanted to let you know that we did have a pre-meeting for our Christmas lights this morning, and it went really well. They will start putting lights up or starting the light show type stuff Wednesday morning. And I'll keep everybody updated on that so everybody will feel good about it. And I promise you I'll be on them about doing that.
Are we still partnering with an outside entity? Okay.
And I promise you I will be on them to make sure they complete the work.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? Well, thank you for a really good report. Yep. We're happy that things are going so well here. I saw what was left at the riverfront yesterday.
Wait, that's a hard act to follow, but you the man for the job.
Did you volunteer to go first, Mr. Hendrick? Chief?
I made him go. I pulled rank.
Okay. All right.
I've only got 8 pages, so I'll try to get fast.
We were doing so well.
Well, good evening. It's like I just saw you guys a couple of days ago. Time's flying, but I wanted to just talk about my department real quick, and I wanted to brag a little bit and kind of change gears. I'm always talking serious business. So I'm going to kind of give you a little update on what's behind the scenes of Conway Fire. So there's 35 career personnel, 5 of which are administrative staff and 30 are suppression staff. We have 5 volunteers and 7 associate members, which is something new we added a couple of years ago. That's like a cook or a chaplain or anyone who wants to be a part of our fire family without an official capacity. So that's been a fun addition. Our average age of all personnel is 38, which was surprising to me. The average years of service with Conway is 11.3. The longest is 42, which is Jimmy Hammond. Wow. The shortest is 7 months, which is actually 3 people we hired back in the beginning of this year. We have 1 person that's got over 40 years, 2, and next week we'll have 3 that have got 30 plus years. We have 10 with 20 plus years, and that includes volunteer and career time. So we're proud of that. So I added up the total years of service with Conway, and it's 441 years.
Wow.
And the total years in the fire service, which includes any other time they may have had before Conway, is 540 years. Wow. So out of our 40 personnel, that's pretty impressive. So we hang our hat on that. So we always talk about our fire family. For years we've talked about how we are a tight-knit group. So we like to brag on our families. We have 63 children and 10 grandchildren, which was a lot more than I thought. But we used to always talk about the fire wives, and all that. Well, now we have female firefighters, so we talk about significant others. We don't want to narrow it down too much. We have in 2000, I think it was 10 or so, Chief Becker really pushed an initiative for formal education. So we have 13 associate degrees, 4 undergrad, 2 graduate, and we have 5 that are in progress. So we're pretty proud of that. So we do push the formal education. We have 4 EMTs, which is a step above what we require. So we're proud of that as well. I got a little bit about some of our call volume over the past decade. I just kind of pulled some numbers real quick to kind of show you where we're at. I get asked a lot, where's the sirens going? Where's the sirens going? Well, it's because we're busy. We're a lot busier than people realize. We're kind of behind the scenes most of the time. So we kind of want to bring you up to speed of where we're at. In 2009, we ran 3,622 total incidents, which is a pretty high number for us. But in 2010, they actually opened the Pitch Landing Fire Station out off of Pitch Landing Road off 701 South. And the next year we dropped down to 3,107, which was a 16% decrease. But in 2019, we ran 3,853, which is a 24% increase. So every year we're climbing, we're getting busier and busier. In 2000,
excuse me, you're doing more than 10 a day.
Yes, ma'am. And that's out of all 3 stations. In 2010, from 2010 to 2014, I did our station averages to kind of see which station is the busiest. It's kind of a pride thing, but I added up the numbers. At Station 1, which is our main station, they ran 1,700 calls. Station 2 was 1,100, and Station 3 was 480. Station 3 was only open in 2002, so it's kind of a newer station for us. So 2014, we opened a public safety building, which shifted that station to the core of the city, which was a big asset for us. So it also shifted the numbers around. So from 2015 to 2019, they ran 2,047 calls out of the main station, which was a 16.56% increase. Station 2 dropped. They went down to 1,089, which is a 1.23% decrease. And the big stat of the day is 745 calls for Station 3, which is across the river. That's a 55% increase in 10 years. So we are getting busier, and it proves that we're getting busier out that way. So it's nice to have the station in the core of the city. The problem we ran into now is this kind of overlaps our Station 2 because, they're kind of hugged up against each other. Station 1 can get to 501 corridor a lot faster, so it kind of cut down their call volume. So we are staying busy. It's busy times for everybody, but especially for us. One stat that we're proud of is that we can get to all of the emergency incidents in 4 minutes and 48 seconds anywhere in the city. That number stayed true for the past 5 or 6 years. We pull that every year to make sure we're below 5. That's kind of our goal. So that's pretty impressive. And that's from the time the alarm sounds until we're on scene. So that's pretty impressive, 4 minutes and 48 seconds. The city's growing in size. We try to stay within that window for ISO mileage and to try to keep this radius down. ISO says we must get to a house fire within the first 5.33 minutes, and the entire group, which is all the fire engines and personnel, within 9.33 minutes, 90% of the time, which is a lot of stats, but we do meet that statistic, and we maintain that for the past 5 years. Our goal is once the call is dispatched is to be in the street within 60 to 90 seconds, and that's any time of day or night. So if they're sound asleep, they've got 1 minute to get up, get dressed, and get in the truck. So it's pretty impressive stats to get turned out that quick. Our busiest day of the week is over the last decade. I pulled the stats. The busiest day of the week is Mondays and Fridays, which is kind of weird, but that's just where we're at. The entire weekday is busy. The weekends are really slow, which I thought was kind of backwards because they seem busier on the weekends, but I guess not. The busiest time of day is between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m., with 3 to 4 p.m. being the busiest. It used to be in years past, it was always at night because of unattended cooking, people going to sleep when they're cooking, but for some reason for us, it's 3 to 4 p.m. and it's a significant spike as well. So that was a neat stat. We're on pace to have a slower year this year because of COVID. We pulled some of our numbers back in the beginning of the year, and we were actually way down. We were almost down 60% at one point. So, we thought we were running more calls because of COVID patients, but actually it was down. So just real quick on a typical day at the Conway Fire Department, they get an hour to check the trucks. They do an hour of PT. And then there's a couple of stats I just want to brag on, because when ISO came in 2015 for the first time, we missed that number for an ISO 1 by, it was just a couple of points. So we went back and regrouped, met with the department. I challenged them to, hey, this is what we need to do to meet this goal so we can get ISO 1. So just as some numbers to throw out to how we reached that goal. A pre-fire plan, just to kind of a brief overview of that, is we go to a commercial business, draw out what the building looks like, put it in a file in case we ever need it. There's 1,900 businesses on our list. When we started this, we were only at 40-something%. They made it to 100%. They've hit all the businesses once. The goal is to hit them annually, but now that they've been drawn out, we can just go into a touch-up. So it's made it a lot easier for us. So we're really proud of that. So we challenged that goal, and they were 100%. Training, this is hands-on training, lectures, online training, and all of that. In 2015, they averaged 450 hours a month and 5,425 for the year. In 2019, they averaged 1,172 hours a month for 14,072 hours. So I challenged them to, hey, if you're going to do the training, document it. And that was our biggest disconnect. So I'm very proud of that. And I wanted to make sure that they understood how proud we are of that. Went to 175 hours of public education events last year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's half an hour a day. And that includes weekends. So that's a pretty significant amount. The rest of the time is just spent cleaning and, ready for the calls. Our current staffing is good. We're only down one person. We elected not to hire right now because we don't have a class that starts until January, so we'll hire then. That'll put us full staff. We kind of mirror the police department and how long it takes to get our personnel up and running. Once they go through the recruit class, is 240 hands-on hours, and that's about 4 months. And then they come out and they have to go through 2 levels of training with us. One takes about 2 months, that's their basic firefighter, and one's 3 months, which is their driver operator to drive the fire trucks. So within about 12 months, they'll go from fresh off the street to driving fire apparatus. So that's pretty impressive time turnaround for us. Just a couple of goals I want to throw out. And this is outside of my normal council goals. Just some things I thought of. We want to increase our formal education with the department. We want to make sure that our personnel are ready for the next level. I know we've challenged our staff to make sure that number 2s and 3s are ready, but we want the 4, 5s, and 6s ready to take that spot as well. Most of our command staff is within retirement age in the next 5 years. So that kind of triggered me to really start looking into, we need to make sure our staff's up and running because, if we elect to retire, there's going to be a pretty significant drop off in the next 5 years. But I was told I'm not retiring. So there's that. And our motto is striving for excellence. And we want to strive for excellence in everything we do. And that's everything from cleaning toilets to plane crashes. So that's one of the things I always say. I did get a text when I was standing in the hallway and I wanted to brag on this individual. Philip Moore is one of our fire sergeants. He was accepted into the South Carolina Firefighters Association Leadership Institute, which is a program I went through 2 years ago. So that's a really big deal. There's only 12 in the state. So he should be proud of himself for going through that process. So I wanted to brag on him.
What's his name again, please?
Philip Moore. And that's all I have, unless somebody has any questions.
Yes, let's go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Lee, good work. Those were interesting and entertaining statistics. I appreciate that. Is it true? Is the ambulance out at Station 2, is that still the busiest ambulance in the county?
It is the busiest in the county, and the second busiest is University off of 544. And I think last year, the University Station was a couple hundred calls ahead, but they piggyback on each other. When the Conway ambulance is out, that's next into town. So Conway is the busiest. That's year round. Myrtle Beach is seasonal, but in the off season they're off. But for us, we're always on.
So
and Conway's very sick.
So there's a good chance. It was sinus drainage. We're good. Y'all made me lose my train of thought. I'm sorry. So anyway, with that being said, that's sort of like the closest ambulance to Conway, because outside of that, you've got Juniper Bay, Bucksport.
Yep. In that order.
So there's a good chance that if you need an ambulance, it's busy.
Right.
Which means you guys come in 4.4 minutes or less.
Right. And we're providing the first responder service.
What are your thoughts on getting your guys to sort of talking about training and education, like EMT certified? I know some of them are, so that they can do critical life saving.
The only difference between what we provide now and the EMT is very minimal. It's only one skill, and that's first round administering of drugs, and one or two maybe new skills they've added, but it's really not that much of a difference. To go to the level where you advise advanced care would be astronomically expensive, and it would be time consuming. But for what we do, we're trained almost to the exact level as an EMT. However, there is a push in the service to remove everybody from our level and move them to EMT. So that is a 5-year goal to try to get everybody to that level.
Very cool. And lastly, what are your thoughts about the new 911 system going to, did y'all see this where 911, you leave a message?
Yeah. Bring it to, I think it's a good idea simply because we get a lot of complaints. Hey, I called 911 and it took forever. And once it was explained, and I didn't know this, and shame on me, but I didn't know that if you called now and you waited a few minutes and nobody picked up and you hung up and called back, you get bumped to the back of the list. If there's 10 people waiting to get an operator, you went from, maybe 2 or 3 down to 10 again. So you got to start back over. I didn't know that. I didn't realize they answered in order, which is, it's a good idea. I just didn't realize that. So I think with the greeting, it'll keep people on the line so they can get to an operator quicker, because I think they're missing the incident because they're having to wait. And then people, let's say they call 911 today and they have to wait 5 minutes to get to someone, which I think is astronomically high. I'm saying, 30 seconds seems like a day. The next time they need they witness a wreck or see a fire, they might not call because they don't want to deal with it. So I think this will help a lot to speed up that process. That's just my opinion.
Cool. I'd just like to say that we've always been proud of our fire department, and your leadership is clear. Some of the numbers and the accomplishments that you've mentioned really make me feel good. I just need you to know that I'm grandmother to a 5-year-old little girl who for the last 6 months has said she wants to be a firefighter. So no, you cannot retire for a good long time.
There you go.
I want you to teach her.
And as far as my other job, emergency management, I think we covered that enough throughout the year. So unless you want to hear about hurricanes, I'll leave that alone.
You think Jimmy will be there another 42 years?
I do. Just to put it in perspective, he was hired on July 15th, 1978, and I wasn't born until November 15th. So, so he was on the fire department when I was born. So that's always a fun stuff.
That's funny. And you've been chief for a while. How long?
6 years this December.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, and we value you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
That's excellent. So from here we go to our council input. One of the most difficult things that I do is to remember. Thank you so much, Mr. Jordan. See, now I did go to him like 3 times in a row before I went back here, but I think we're back at you again. So
well, I won't take much time, so you don't have to worry about it. Just remind everybody, as we've seen our spike in COVID cases the last 2 weeks, everybody be vigilant of this, and let's not let our guard down. We do not want to end up in a bad situation again. So that's all I've got tonight. I'm glad to see everybody. Have a safe week, and see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you so much, Mr. White.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, all. My issues is around traffic in the Sugar Hill, Thompson Street, Woodward Street, and Myrtle Street. All that's in that little area. The folks at Woodward and Myrtle are asking for 4-way stop signs of speed bumps. And the Thompson Street also is the speed bumps. Sugar Hill just need to do something because people are flying up and down that street and they're not taking awareness of the children that are playing in that area. So we can just monitor those areas for us.
We'll get a speed study out there right away.
Okay. And then secondly, Curry Street, the little short alley, and McCray Alley, we were supposed to be doing something with the closure of Curry Street anyway, and I get beat up every time I go on my front porch. When are y'all gonna get that thing
I
done?
think we've got a plan, but I don't know that we've been able to execute yet. I think it's been 3-4 weeks, 2 weeks.
No, 3.
Okay.
So if you would check on that for me so I can rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Timms?
I think that with COVID not going anywhere, if anything, it's trying to come back with a vengeance again. I think we do need to be very aware and set the right tone for what should happen in the city. We all need to be taking care of each other in the small ways that we can do, and look out for your neighbors. And I do believe that Conway has done a good job, but it's not showing up right now. I think the spike is occurring everywhere, but we've got a ways to go, and I don't want us to let our guard down and not be very careful as to what we promote and how we promote it in the city, because I do think people look to us to say whether something is safe or not. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Timms. Mr. Hubbard?
I don't have very much. I wanted to say we had a partner with the United Way, the Council on Aging, with the Day of Caring. And I was very pleased to see that most of my volunteers were city employees, and I wanted to recognize them. Adam, I can't do it from memory. Adam was there. He was swinging a hammer. Do you remember who all was there?
Bradley Todd, Amanda Hooper, Wanda was there, and someone else. Christina Petty. Yeah, I think that was this.
They did a great job too. I'm just very pleased to see city employees stepping up to do volunteer work like that. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. Mr. Goldfinch.
Mayor, I don't have anything tonight. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Hyman.
Just briefly, I did want to make a comment as to, again, Ashley, with the, you can hear the whistles out there, with school being like it is for kids. That is one sense of normalcy for them. And I do think that is very, very important. And as long as we safeguard what we're doing, I think it's very good. Other thing I just want to make a comment about, I know we're being broadcast, but I think it needs to be said that the Halloween cancellation had absolutely zero to do with the city of Conway and everything to do with somebody else. But I think we need to make the public aware that that was not our fault. But that's all I've got.
I agree with you. That's been a big disappointment. I've heard a good bit about it. I just hope that everybody's learned from that process. I only have one thing. There's a group called the Peaceful Protest. You might recall from our meeting 2 weeks ago that mention was made of my having participated in about a story that came up in a local newspaper about defunding police. What's odd about that is that podcast went on for in excess of 2 hours. And the only mention of defunding police came from a 17-year-old who lives in the state of Florida. And she just sort of innocently and childishly talked about why she thought that was a good idea. And so much else came of it that wasn't spoken of. If anybody is interested in hearing for themselves sort of what goes on there is an event on October 30th at 6 p.m. They apparently are doing some of this live in Chapin Park at North Kings Highway in Myrtle Beach. But there is virtual accessibility via Facebook and I guess, what do you call this, an address or at the Peaceful Protest SC? Is that enough to get you to it? I don't know about these things. Okay, all right. And there's something with an envelope. That's an email. Okay, but again, October 30th at 6 p.m. if anybody's interested. I just promised a young woman, Mia Angelou. What does she have a name? That I would let it be known. She's a young social activist who's going to be somebody to contend with in just a few years. Very proud of her. That's all I have. And I will accept a motion to adjourn. Mr. Hubbard. Mr. Jordan, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That came to mind. I don't know. Is there a second? Mr. White?
I'll second.
Thank you. The only reason I got him right is because I've known him since he was probably 6. All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Good night.
All right.